suggestions. Now, in the last press conference held on 27 January 2020, the chairman informed the press that the new constitution will be delivered no later than the 31st of March. Yesterday, 30th March, the new draft constitution was sealed, signed, and delivered to His Excellency the President at State House. Now, the document is intended to reset the governance principles, procedures, and systems, and will pave the way for the ushering in of the Third Republic of the Gambia. As you can see, this is not business as usual. This ceremony comes with a tinge of, shall I say, regret or sadness that the media, a very worthy companion and a valued partner that has been with us every step of the way since the first maiden conference on the 5th of July 2018, cannot be physically present owing to the coronavirus pandemic and the social distancing procedures that we must observe. Now, thankfully, technology has come to our rescue, and ladies and gentlemen of the media can remotely follow and then ask questions to the chairman after the chairman has delivered his statement to the press. The questions can be in English or in any of the local languages on the platforms that I have indicated. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite the Honorable Chairman of the Constitutional Review Commission, Justice Cherno Suleiman Jallow, to deliver his statement to the press. Honorable Chairman.
Thank you very much, Secretary of the CRC. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen of the media, good afternoon. I have a statement to deliver, but before I do that, I would want to reflect briefly on the current emergency situation that we find ourselves in, along with practically every country around the world. And that has to do with the COVID-19, or the corona virus pandemic that we all are concerned about. It's about humanity and the well-being of humanity, and it's a matter that concerns every individual. For us, it is regretful that we have to have this ceremony, if I can call it that, to finalize our work and to deliver to the public the draft constitution and the accompanying report. We do certainly recognize the sensitivities around this particular subject matter, and our prayers are with those that are affected, the families, and we certainly continue to pray for the well-being of our people, for humanity in general. We at the CRC have been trying to do our very utmost to distance ourselves from each other as required under the emergency regulations, in order to protect each other and to protect the general public. And we continue to do the best we can to sensitize the public in this particular regard as well. But nonetheless, as a country, we do need to move on. We do need to continue working. The government has to encourage that. We just need to be cautious in terms of our interactions with each other. So whilst we are at it, we all should continue to pray for the well-being of humanity and for the Almighty God, who has power over all things and all living beings, to safeguard and protect all of us from further ravages of this international, of this pandemic, which is causing or wreaking so much havoc around the globe. Having said that, I would at this juncture want to, on behalf of my colleague commissioners and the staff of the CRC Secretariat, to indicate how proudly I am honored and gratified to welcome all of you to yet another historic dialogue with the Constitutional Review Commission. Today's dialogue takes a different format because it is going to be done online and should be very interactive, as most of you will be joining us through Skype, WhatsApp, Zoom, and by sending text messages to the numbers that have already been shared with you. This online media dialogue is necessitated, as I indicated earlier, by the outbreak of the contagious global pandemic of COVID-19, which has made all public gatherings virtually impossible. Besides, we need to also comply with the restrictions in the emergency regulations promulgated by the government to curb the spread of this virus in the Gambia. Truly, from the onset, we have had many interactions during which we updated you, members of the media, on issues pertaining to the CRC assignment of developing and delivering a new constitution for our country. We cherish and highly appreciate the mutual cordiality and partnership we have had since the establishment of the Commission in June 2018. You have played your part professionally within the spirit of our mutual partnership by imparting relevant information to the public in general. We are extremely grateful and satisfied with the partnership which has enabled all of us to get to deliver a new constitution for the Republic of the Gambia. So I want to be very emphatic on this point because it is important that as the CRC, we recognize that the journey we have been on is one we've embarked on with so many other people. And the media in particular has been with us from day one, right up to this moment, and I'm sure they will continue to be with us and to be with the new draft constitution going forward. So I take this opportunity on behalf of my colleague commissioners to thank each and every member of the media, both at home here as well as abroad, who have been partnering with us in this endeavor. The purpose of this CRC online press conference today is to inform the Gambian public through the media that the CRC has finalized the draft constitution and submitted it to His Excellency the President of the Republic yesterday, Monday, 30th of March 2020, as required by the CRC Act of 2017. Meanwhile, the Commission will continue to be in place until 1 month, as stipulated in the CRC Act, after the date of enactment by the National Assembly of the bill introducing the Constitution. We are also required to attend the National Assembly if needed to clarify any matter and or answer any questions the honorable ministers, also the honorable members of the National Assembly may seek of us. We remain ready to fulfill our statutory obligations as required. As regards the methodology adopted by the CRC to arrive at its decisions that inform the drafting of the new Constitution, I will quote extensively with necessary modifications from my statement of yesterday, which I made during the submission of the draft Constitution to His Excellency, the President of the Republic. And I begin that quote. As required in the CRC Act of 2017, the CRC has devised and employed numerous strategies to involve and allow Gambians to actively participate in developing a durable constitution that will take on board their wishes and aspirations. The CRC has, throughout the performance of its functions and exercise of the discretionary powers vested in it under the CRC Act, adhered to the statutorily established functions and exercised its discretionary powers in a fair and balanced manner, bearing in mind at all times matters that it considered to be in the best interest and future of the Gambia. I made sure of this as chairperson. Indeed, from the inception of our work, I made sure that the ground rules were properly established and agreed upon. Our role as commissioners was to facilitate public opinions, play the role of devil's advocate by ensuring the full coverage of all angles to an issue, make an assessment of what was essential or fundamental for inclusion in the draft constitution, and ensure a properly and effectively drafted constitution that left little to no room for interpretation or uncertainty. Personal beliefs were eschewed and kept out of the decision-making process. The processes and procedures adopted in developing the draft constitution are articulated in detail in the report that was submitted to His Excellency the President along with the draft constitution. Suffice it to say, however, that the CRC approach from the inception of its work had been to utilize all available practical platforms to afford Gambians and other stakeholders the opportunity to participate in the constitution building process. The platforms included face-to-face public consultations, focus group discussions, written submissions on the issues document, online surveys, household surveys, face-to-face discussions with other stakeholders, including the 3 organs of state, relevant government ministries, departments and agencies, civil society groups, faith-based organizations, specific interest groups, associations, and individuals, and a review of media debates, including social media. In essence, these consultation platforms represented the first of their type and magnitude in constitutional development in the history of the Gambia, and provided unprecedented opportunities for citizens and other stakeholders to directly participate in the building of their new constitution to replace the 1997 Constitution. While ultimately the CRC Act empowered the CRC to exercise its judgment on what it considered appropriate, the CRC gave enormous credence to public opinion, recognizing that constitution building must be centered on the people to be governed by the Constitution to give it the legitimacy to stand out as a credible and generally accepted instrument. Hence, the CRC's motto of transparency, inclusiveness, representation, participation, and ownership. Our own direct interface with the Gambian people, both at home and abroad, and other stakeholders, has been an eye-opener to the circumstances and needs of the people in our context in its broadest perspective. We are enormously grateful to our citizens for the active interest they had developed in the constitutional review process from the commencement of our assignment, and perhaps even more importantly, for the ideas they contributed to the development of their new constitution. We, the commissioners, drew inspiration from them, and without the ideas they so graciously shared with us, and sometimes with emotion and strong passion, the draft constitution would not have been of the quality we believe it is. Non-citizens and other stakeholders within and outside the country who contributed ideas to the CRC had equally made a huge positive difference to the work of the CRC. Constitution building is a serious business, but it is also a Herculean task, especially when the drafters of the new constitution are confronted with tons of wishes and aspirations for inclusion in that constitution. When we were tasked to review the 1997 Constitution, His Excellency the President was emphatic about the need to develop a constitution that will serve the test of time. This, therefore, required us to take a serious look at key constitutional issues relative to the present and future generations. In other words, what is best for this country today and going into the future, so that both the present and future generations are governed by the same rules, and such that an amendment of the Constitution will only be necessitated by the most exceptional of circumstances. To achieve this within a period of 18 months was not easy, and required many long days and nights to get us to this day. We remain forever grateful to the Almighty God for giving us both the strength and the commitment to achieve this for our country and as our leaders expected of us. When the CRC published the first draft of the proposed constitution in November of 2019, it had 3 objectives. The first was to give Gambians and other stakeholders the opportunity to determine whether the wishes and aspirations they expressed to the CRC during the first round of public consultations had been properly addressed, and where any of those had been omitted, for the CRC to explain its reasons for the omission, exercising the authority vested in it under the CRC Act. The second was to afford further dialogue on matters that could be clarified better and ensure a better draft constitution. The third was to invite opinions on new important elements that the draft constitution could usefully provide. We achieved all three objectives and exercised proper discretion in that regard. The participants in the second round of public consultations were actively engaged with the CRC, and our process of constitutional development was further enriched. End of my quote of yesterday. In terms of what's new in the draft constitution, the draft constitution contains 319 sections divided into 20 chapters and several parts. In the assessment of the CRC, the draft constitution represents the generality of the wishes and aspirations of the Gambian people. Each chapter addresses a different issue, although in some instances certain chapters have a correlation with provisions contained in other chapters. In order to ensure clarity and prevent inconsistencies, appropriate sectional and cross-references are made. The draft constitution that we are publishing today is an embodiment of the hopes and aspirations of the people of the Gambia. I will cite a few examples of the new elements contained in the draft constitution since the publication of the consultation draft in November of 2019 and the receipt of opinions thereafter. Chapter 1, which comprises 6 sections, recognizes that the Gambia is a sovereign republic and a multi-party democratic state. A new provision has been added to declare that the Gambia comprises people of different faiths, and each faith is to be respected and treated fairly without any discrimination. In essence, Section 1 of the draft constitution retains Section 1 of both the 1970 and 1997 constitution by simply declaring the Gambia as a sovereign republic. It also retains Section 100, subsection 2B of the 1997 Constitution, which prohibits the National Assembly, amongst other things, from enacting any law establishing any religion in the Gambia as a state religion. Furthermore, Section 12 of the draft Constitution declares that culture and respect for ethnic and religious diversity is the foundation of our nation and the cumulative effect of the Gambian people and the nation. Accordingly, the provision, amongst other things, obligates the state to recognize and protect ethnic and religious diversity of the Gambia, in which all faiths are treated fairly, to ensure peaceful coexistence between all ethnic and religious groups. Section 49, under Chapter 6 of the draft Constitution, guarantees freedom of conscience, religion, thought, belief, and opinion. It has been modified to ensure that an individual's manifestation or practice of his or her religion is not subject to interference by the state or any other person or authority. Under Section 88, subsection 5, paragraph B of Chapter 8, provision is made that the president cannot exercise any power, and that is any president, cannot exercise any power to establish any religion as a state religion. We have also inserted a new Section 4 on national symbols, comprising the national flag, national anthem, coat of arms, and the public seal. These are considered to be very important symbols that all Gambians should identify with. With respect to the national days, we have identified the specific dates in the draft Constitution to ensure clarity. Chapter 6 of the draft Constitution addresses the protection of fundamental human rights and freedoms, which is a key feature of any democracy. This chapter provides for fundamental human rights and freedoms in sections 31 to 73. On the freedom of expression, the previous provision that effectively removed from protection the uttering of abusive or threatening speech or writing causing feelings of ill will, disaffection, or hostility has been removed. The CRC upon reflection and carefully considering representations received, formed the view that it was not necessary to curtail the freedom of expression in that regard. In addition, a new provision has been included on the right to fair administrative action. This, amongst other things, declares that a person has the right to be given reasons in writing in respect of any action taken against him or her, irrespective of whether it is in the public service or in the private sector. With respect to the election of president under Chapter 8, the period within which presidential election is to be held before the term of the incumbent president expires has been increased from 3 weeks to 6 weeks. The CRC considered that some element of flexibility was necessary to allow for unanticipated eventualities. The president is given a free hand to nominate and appoint his or her vice president, However, ministerial appointments are subject to National Assembly confirmation, which must be carried out within 14 days after. In order to ensure that the confirmation process is not politicized to frustrate a presidential nominee, Chapter 9 on the legislature has been modified to require confirmations to be made within a prescribed period of 14 days. Where it decides not to confirm a candidate, it is obligated to provide its reasons to the president in writing within 3 days of that decision. Any failure in that regard shall deem a candidate to be approved. Furthermore, the National Assembly is to be guided by certain established principles, which include respecting the qualifications and disqualifications contained in the Constitution, respecting the guiding principles specified in respect of an office for which confirmation is required, exercising good judgment without concentrating on differences of ideology, belief, or political party affiliation, and treating candidates for confirmation with respect. In essence, the role of the National Assembly in any confirmation process is to aid and assist the President without necessarily impeding the President. In Chapter 13 on Public Finance Management, new provision is made prohibiting the imposition of taxation by giving it retroactive effect. Every tax imposed must have a prospective effect, not otherwise. The chapter on the public service has been revised and better streamlined to avoid repeating certain provisions in respect of the various service commissions established under that chapter. In a similar vein, the chapter on national security has been revised slightly to reduce the composition of the National Security Council and remove from membership of the Internal Security Service Commission the heads of the relevant security service institutions. This is designed to ensure transparency and better governance. It is important that the general public reads the entirety of the draft constitution against the proposed consultation draft that was published in 2019 to see the other specific areas where changes have been effected. As I indicated earlier, I was only citing a few examples. The CRC has made further technical amendments of a drafting nature to ensure better internal consistency within the draft. I would once again wish to thank all partners on this journey and join our citizens in hoping for a future that is guided by the wishes and aspirations enshrined in the draft constitution. On that note, I thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the media, and conclude my statement at this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Justice Jorno Suleiman Jallow, for that brilliant statement. For those watching us live, we are here at the Constitutional Review Commission for the press conference following the release of the final draft constitution to His Excellency, the President Adama Barrow. Without much ado, my task is simple. I'm going to open the floor. It's the first time it's a virtual press conference, so already some journalists have sent in their questions. I have a couple of them here, so I will start reading some of those questions to Chairman. Chairman is not new to virtual conferences like this. We have done one in Basse during our public consultation for the diaspora community. Mr. Chairman, we have a couple of questions. We have 4 questions from one Momodu S. Juve. He works with Bloomberg News in New York. I will read the first question and then you can give him the answer. His first question is, what are the main changes in the draft constitution compared to the 1997 constitution?
Thank you very much, Mr. Juve. The best answer I can give is one needs to look at the 1997 Constitution, compare it with the draft Constitution, that there you get a comprehensive answer. But I think what I need to indicate is that we have not dispensed entirely with the 1997 Constitution. One has to acknowledge, as we did, that the 1997 Constitution does have good provisions within, and we have adopted those provisions. In some instances, we've modified them. But there are fundamental differences between this Constitution and the 1997 Constitution. And one of them has to do with the new chapters we've introduced in the draft Constitution. We've introduced a new chapter on leadership and governance principles. That is an entirely new chapter, and it has come about as a result of the feedback we received from the public consultations, where emphasis was placed immensely on governance, and we thought that was key, and we developed those principles. And we also have created a new chapter on independent institutions, and we've identified 6 key institutions that we thought are central to the issue of governance and in terms of the administration of this country. That one is also new, and we consider it to be quite fundamental. And the interesting thing is that nobody objected to that particular, those 2 particular, generally nobody objected to those 2 chapters that we have created. We've also created a new chapter, perhaps not entirely new, on land. But I say new in the sense that this is the first comprehensive chapter on land matters that we have created. The 1997 Constitution, if memory serves me well, has only one provision on land in terms of requiring the establishment of the Land Commission. But we have gone further. We've established a comprehensive chapter on land tenure systems in this country. We've identified those being freehold, leasehold, as well as customary tenure. All those have been identified, and we've also sought to protect land vis-a-vis citizens and non-citizens, because we think this is quite critical, particularly coming from the public consultations that we have been engaged in. But in addition to that, we've ensured in the final draft Constitution that we will be publishing shortly that we've created appropriate balance to ensure that justice is what really governs the land tenure system in this country in terms of acquisition and use. So in that respect, yes, there are quite a number of other provisions. If I want to go into all the orders, I'm sure that's going to take quite a while, but I thought I needed to outline first the fundamentals. The presidential system, I should just point out, is key. It has introduced a 2-term limit of 5 years, maximum 10 years, that anybody can serve as president. And for the first time, as I already mentioned, it's introduced a system of confirmation of ministerial appointments, and that also applies to certain key other offices, particularly those relating to independent offices. But like I said, I mean, I can go on, but the reality is when one juxtaposes the 1997 Constitution against the 2020 draft Constitution, you'll see a lot of marked differences.
Thank you very much, Chairman. The second question reads, does the draft constitution provide for a better balance of power between the executive, legislature, and the judiciary?
In our considered opinion, the answer is yes. I think people should read the provisions. We've tried to ensure that there is appropriate balance based on the separation of powers as well, and to the extent feasible to ensure that each institution plays its rules to the maximum.
We have another question from one Omar Ba of the Standard newspaper. The question reads, now that the final draft is submitted to the President, what happened next?
Well, our mandate was to draft a new constitution and prepare a report and to submit those to the President, which we did yesterday. Effectively, as far as that subject is concerned, that's where our mandate ends. Thereafter, what remains is a combination of executive and legislative action. From the executive's standpoint, it is for them to now steer the draft constitution forward to the legislature, along with a bill containing the draft constitution. And it is then for the legislature to look at the draft constitution and the bill, debate the subject matter, and then we as commissioners could be called, as I mentioned in my statement, to provide explanations or clarifications as may be required of us. So that in essence is what is going to happen, and the Constitutional Review Commission will come to an end 1 month after the bill introducing the Constitution into the National Assembly has been done.
There is a follow-up question to Omar before we move to the next one. There are reports that President Barrow and his newly registered political party are planning to reject the final constitution on the grounds that the current draft will strengthen the National Assembly and weaken the Gambian presidency. What is CRC take on this?
The CRC has no take on it. I think we cannot go on speculation. It is not our responsibility. Our responsibility at the CRC is in accordance with the mandate given to us under the CRC Act, and that is what we have responsibility to discharge. Anything outside of that framework, really, I think will be inappropriate for us to get into that debate.
Another question is, does the President have the power to adjust the final draft before it goes to the National Assembly?
What we have, like I said, what we are mandated to draft the Constitution and submit it. What happens thereafter really is not something that the CRC has power over. It goes to the executive. It is for the executive to decide whether he wants to send it wholesale to the legislature and from there on to a referendum, or whether he wants to do something completely different. That is really outside of our mandate. Our mandate, like I said, is very specific under the CRC Act, and we do not provide legal advice, and I seek not to do that here either. I think it's important that citizens have been able to, or will shortly, be in a position to see the draft constitution that was submitted to His Excellency the President yesterday, and make a determination for themselves in terms of the way forward, or seek advice in terms of the way forward. But that's about the best I can say.
Another question, this time from Ibrahim Ba, iAfrica TV. How did the CRC take the final decision from opposing position papers from the public on each subject on the draft constitution?
Well, it depends on the subject matter, and in fact, it's only very, very few areas where we have deviated from public opinion. And what we have done, we based it on research, we based it on practical concerns or issues that needed to be addressed, and we've also taken into account the level of agreement or disagreement within amongst members of the public. So it's a question of making sure that these things are balanced. In one or two areas, we recognize the need for further study and further review, and that required a lot more time, which we did not have, and therefore could not deal with those subject matter. But we've provided the necessary framework and also encouraged the National Assembly to take those matters forward. But I think I should add that it's important that our citizens and others read the report, because the report outlines a reason for every decision that we have taken, particularly in those key areas that were of concern to members of the public.
Another question coming from Yankuba Jallo, a reporter with the Forea newspaper. He's asking, you did your nationwide consultation in which majority of people want every person born in the Gambia to be a Gambian, irrespective of their parents' nationality. I would like to know the position of CRC on this.
Well, I think if you look at the proposed draft constitution that we published in November 2019, we provided a framework that would allow the National Assembly to grant citizenship to those that were born and are living in the country as of a specified date. It was 15 November, we've extended that to the end of December 2019. And yes, the public opinion was overwhelmingly in support of automatic citizenship. But we had to look at a number of variables in this particular regard. And those have to do with the ability of the country to absorb automatic citizenship for everybody that comes into this country, or that for every child that is born in this country. There are implications for it. There are financial, there are social, there are different dimensions that needed to be looked into. We did not have that time to look into that, and if we were to do that, we certainly would have had to exceed our mandate in terms of the period. We would have gone much longer than today, and certainly much longer than May, when our term under the law would have expired. So we built in a framework to look at what is feasible. And in doing so, we made comparative studies in the region and within the continent itself, and recognized that the countries that have been able to do this were countries who are countries of means. We have to take our economic size into account. We have to take our diversity into account. There are so many factors that we needed to take into account. So quite clearly, we are not saying that citizenship is not available to those who are based in the Gambia here and are not nationals of this country. We've created a mechanism, and that mechanism has always been there for them to pursue the path to obtaining nationality. I think that will give the opportunity to the state to balance its resources against the numbers that it takes in order to ensure that whoever it takes in, it is in a position to provide all the necessaries of life that a state is obligated to do without compromising those necessaries as in relation to its citizens. So the framework is there. Those that were born here up to a particular period, we provide this as a recommendation, certainly in the report, for the National Assembly to take that forward after doing the study properly in order to grant them citizenship.
Thank you very much, Chair. A lot of questions are coming in, and it's all coming from journalists. The next one is from Yusuf Telo. He said he have two questions, so I will read the first question. Initially, the CRC promised to submit the new constitution in late December 2019 and has extended until March 2020. Some civil society advocates have raised concern that this has reduced the possibility of constitutional referendum taking place this year. Has the delay from the CRC made it more difficult to pass the constitutional referendum this year?
Well, that's Mr. Taylor's opinion. I'm not sure it's an opinion I will share. The fact of the matter is everything we've done within the ambit of the CRC Act. We have never extended, we have never gone beyond our mandate. The CRC Act gave us 18 months to deliver, but it also gave us an additional 6 months where we can continue with the process to conclusion. We have completed it well in advance of the mandate of the period that has been, obligated under the CRC Act. So, opinion is one thing, reality is another thing, But the fact of the matter is the CRC is in full compliance with its mandate under CRC Act.
Here's a follow-up question. Has the President Office or the Attorney General provided any indication when the final constitution will be forwarded to the National Assembly for parliamentary approval?
Well, Yusuf will have to address that question either to President Barrow or to Honorable Attorney General Batambedo. No, that's not a matter for me to answer. And certainly there has not been any indication to me. And I don't think, that is a matter for me or my CRC colleagues.
Okay. There is one from Adama, a journalist from the FATU network. Mr. Chairman, your commission comes under criticism over the clause of secularism. Can you tell us how has this matter been handled by your commission?
I believe I've already addressed that in my statement. I've outlined the different sections that address this in order to ensure that religious diversity in this country and all faiths are given fair treatment, and nobody interferes with the manifestation or practice of any religion in this country. I think it's important that they refer to the statement, but also to the sections that are outlined in the statement, and better still to make reference to the report that addresses quite comprehensively how the CRC has addressed this issue. In terms of criticism, yes, we recognize that that is not the end of the criticism. It's going to go on, but the fact of the matter is we have a duty to perform, and we perform that to the best of our ability, and without any discrimination between our people, because that would be wrong to do. And we recognize the religious and ethnic diversity of this country, and the importance of ensuring that our people continue to live together in harmony and in unity. And that's what we have tried to emphasize in the draft constitution, irrespective of what somebody else may say to the contrary. But that's exactly what we have tried to build into the draft constitution.
Another question, and in total, how much of dollars was spent on the commission throughout the drafting process?
You mean throughout the engagement process, since the CRC was established? I made this yesterday during my presentation to the President. We have expended, as of 29th March 2020, a sum of a little over $116 million. I can't remember the exact figure, but it's less than 117. So it's $116 million and change.
Another question from the Standard newspaper. Will the issue of term limit affect Barrow's first term in office?
Again, I will encourage members of the public to review the draft constitution. We do have the fourth schedule in the draft constitution, which deals with transitional provisions and consequential amendments. And within that particular schedule, provision is made that the term of the incumbent president shall be counted towards the 10-year period, maximum period that is outlined in the draft constitution.
Yeah, I think it's a similar question. He said, does this draft constitution reset the clock and make Barrow's first term count as per the two-term limit? I think they're similar questions. Another question from the Fourier journalist. What about the concern raised by ward councillors who said they want to be paid monthly and not to receive allowances? Is in the draft?
Yeah, I mean, that issue had been raised with us, but we also made it very clear during our second round of public consultations that those are not matters that can be built into the Constitution. Those are administrative matters that should be sorted out at the local government level. And that is precisely our position. We will encourage that local government authorities review their systems and make that determination. And if you look at the draft constitution, we have enormously empowered the local government authorities, giving them autonomous financial independence as well as decision making. So really, and the reason for that, we want to see national development from the bottom going right to the top. And it is important that the local government authorities take those things into account and make a determination as to what will make them more effective. If you're going to have ward councillors, how can you make them more effective? Would that request be part of that process? That's a judgment we think is best left to the local government authorities, working together with central government.
Another question. Thank you for your tremendous job. At this point, who has the powers to add or remove anything in the draft constitution? And secondly, does the public know if something is added or omitted?
Beginning with the second question, the draft constitution will be published shortly. And I think ultimately, if it finds its way, as we hope it will, to the National Assembly, people will be in a position to make that comparison, to make a determination as to whether it's the original text that's being referred or whether it is whether it has been amended. That's a matter for the public. Anybody can make that review and establish the actual position. Who has the power to amend the Constitution? Our hope, and the Honorable Attorney General has been very specific on this as well, is that the draft Constitution will be taken through its stages right up to a referendum. And our hope is that this will be done without any amendment. But if any amendment is expected to read, I think one thing I can say with certainty, it wouldn't be done by the CRC members, because our mandate, insofar as the draft is concerned, has terminated. So whatever happens thereafter is really out of our hands. But I have always said in the past, I am an optimist, and those who have put us in charge hopefully will respect the views expressed by the public and the positions that we have taken. It is always extremely difficult in a constitutional review process to try to satisfy every opinion, because that can never happen. It has never happened in any constitutional review process. So what we have done is to try to create a balancing act, whereby we review things in a very objective and comprehensive manner to see also what is in the best interest of the country. All other things, one has to recognize that it's not always what you want that must happen. If you were to ask me today whether I love everything in the draft constitution, I will say yes. But if I were given the opportunity to amend, yes, I will amend certain things. And that's in the nature of every individual's thinking. And you do that for every commissioner, for every individual. Yes, there will be people who would want certain things changed. But the fact of the matter is we must move on, and we must respect the fact that the law that was established to that was established to get this constitutional review process forward has been followed, and the public opinion has been taken into account. We've carried our comparative studies, we've done our research, and we've consulted with experts as well. And what we have come up with, which is in the draft constitution, in our view, represents informed positions, informed decisions. And our hope, and we can only express a hope here, is that those in power, those in authority, that can move the process forward will do so with dispatch, obviously bearing in mind the existing circumstances we find ourselves in.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Another follow-up question reads, does the CRC anticipate any amendment to the Constitution by the President before submitting it to National Assembly for approval?
We do not anticipate anything, frankly speaking. I know this is a major concern, and I can see why the questions are coming from every angle. And it was certainly a question also we encountered during the public consultations. But what we've always made very clear, and a position I reiterate now, is that once we are done with the draft constitution, and we are already done with it, frankly speaking, there isn't anything we can do. The matter is outside out of our hands, and I think some of these questions are best followed up with the persons who have authority to take the draft constitution forward.
More questions, and this time we're going to give a chance to journalists because this is a press conference for media houses. I can see a lot of citizens, we call them citizen journalists, they're also trying to ask the chairman some questions, but we give priority to journalists first. Then if there is time, chairman will be able to answer some of those questions. Another one coming from the Standard newspaper. Will the final draft affect politicians with criminal records? Will this include political prisoners like Mr. Dabo?
I'm not going to go into personalities because I don't know what the circumstances of any particular politician is. What we have done in the draft constitution is to outline qualifications and disqualifications. And these were the same qualifications and disqualifications that were published in the draft, that in the proposed draft constitution back in November 2019. So that's the most I can say, certainly. And those are qualifications and disqualifications that have been reviewed with the public during the second round of public consultations, and there was general support for those provisions.
Another question, Mr. Chairman. Are Gambians in the diaspora going to vote in elections? What is the draft saying about this?
Well, in terms of the exercise of the franchise, which is the right to vote, we make absolutely no distinction between Gambians at home and abroad. Every Gambian, wherever you may be, you have that constitutional right. And the other matter is in terms of how are they to be facilitated to participate in elections. We have provided a recommendation in our report to that effect, but also we are aware that under the Elections Act, that is a matter that is to be pursued in that particular regard. But we certainly expect that every Gambian's right to vote will be respected. In terms of the diaspora, what we have recommended, and this is what we have also obtained from participants during the first and second round of public consultation, is that the diaspora voting should be limited to presidential elections because there are cost issues involved. If you go to parliamentary elections and you have hundreds and hundreds of candidates, it becomes extremely costly. It becomes a logistical nightmare in terms of how to go about that process. But again, that is a matter that is left to statute. Statute can always develop on those matters. But we have made it very clear that every Gambian, whether you're here, whether you're abroad, you have that right to the franchise.
Thank you. Another question from Ibrahim Abba of iAfrica TV. Section 91F states that one is qualified to contest as president if he holds a minimum of an undergraduate degree. Does this affect the current president?
That section, which will no longer be 91, and the section numbers have changed, makes two references in that particular regard. He's only cited one. It's either you have a university education qualification with minimum of 5 years experience, or senior secondary school certificate with a minimum of, I think, 10 or 12 years, I can't recall, but it's in the draft constitution. And the reason we've taken that approach is because during the public consultations, the overwhelming number of participants were very emphatic on the need for experience. They said educational qualification alone is not enough, and they were right. Experience is important for that #1 job in this country. So it is important that we emphasize that issue, and that was the reason why we place those two provisions side by side. It's either one or the other.
Okay. Chairman, another question from a freelance journalist, Lamin Jahate. He's asking, in your previous press conference, you did mention that the CRC spent $1.6 million. He's asking, is it million or billion, the cost of the constitutional building? I think myself I can. What do you he's asking whether it's in million or in billion.
Well, it certainly is not billion. we are nowhere close to that. So what I said was, as of 29th March, what was spent in relation to CRC's work was 116 million, not billion. $116 million is and change.
Another question from Omar Ba, again. The president is expected to nullify the 1997 constitution before the new draft constitution goes to referendum. What happens if the new draft fails to pass the test?
Well, first of all, the president doesn't have power to nullify any constitution. What will happen is that the constitution ordinarily should be referred to a referendum pursuant to section 226 of the 1997 Constitution. And if the Constitution is not adopted at the national referendum, that means we remain with the 1997 Constitution, pure and simple. So it's either we vote for the 2020 draft Constitution, or we remain with the 1997 Constitution.
Another one again. What is the role of the CRC in terms of implementation of the draft constitution? What will CRC do?
The CRC does not have any implementing powers with respect to the draft constitution. However, in the fourth schedule of the draft constitution, we have established a Constitution Implementation Commission and outlined its membership, and also made provision for a National Assembly Committee on the implementation to aid the work of that commission. And the hope there is that all implementation with respect to the draft constitution will be taken forward by that particular commission, not this commission. Remember, once this commission is dissolved, whenever that is, that's the end of it.
Thank you. I'm trying to check for more corrections. Another one coming from Musa is asking, is all Gambians consulted in the drafting of this national document? If yes, how do you conduct your consultations?
We have, I laugh because, anyway, we have consulted very broadly, and we've outlined our consultation platforms, and I made this very clear in my statement as well. We've used different medium in terms of how we reach out to the Gambian public. We've had the face-to-face public consultations, we've had focus group consultations, we've had the external consultations, we've had online surveys, house-to-house surveys, we've invited written submissions. Like I said in my statement, I mean, looking at the expansive nature of our consultation process, I don't think any Gambian can fairly deny the fact that they've all been given good opportunity to participate in the constitution building process. And unless he has a different medium that he thought we left out, but I think it has been as comprehensive as we possibly could have got it.
There is no further question, but there are people who are watching online. They want to ask some question, if the chairman permit.
Just educate me a little. This is a press conference. How do you deal with that? I just want to be clear.
Yeah,
I don't have a problem doing that.
Yeah, we are giving priority to journalists. So if we are exhaustive in that aspect, we can take just 1-2 questions from.
No problem. You are my boss in this. Yes.
Another one from the Foroya guy. What about death penalty, voting of prisoners at mile to secularism and the right of the media? Are these captured in the final constitution?
I think I've answered some of those questions previously. In terms of the death penalty, we've indicated very clearly in our report that the death penalty is actually not prescribed in the Constitution. A reference is made to it in 1997 Constitution, but it is not it's not a prescription of the Constitution. It is contained, I believe, in 3 pieces of statutes: the Criminal Code, the Gambia Armed Forces Act, and the Anti-Terrorism legislation. So that is a matter that the National Assembly needs to deal with, because they may decide to amend it and remove those impositions or do otherwise. So we didn't see the need to address that in the draft constitution, but we certainly do have a provision on the right to life.
Thank you, Chairman. Another one here reads, what are the safeguards in the Constitution which will make the draft Constitution stand the test of time, meaning to withstand the future circumstances?
I will say every provision in the draft Constitution. Every provision in the draft Constitution has a purpose, and depending on the context in which it is built and the chapter within which it appears, it is designed to ensure longevity in terms of the continued existence of the draft Constitution. And like I said, every single provision in the draft Constitution, in our considered view, is important, and that includes every comma, every full stop, and everything that you find in the draft Constitution.
Thank you. Follow-up. What were the key challenges in the building of this new Constitution?
Well, it's a good question. We fortunately didn't have that many. Our biggest challenge was time. We were constrained. The 18 months was really very, very tight to enable us to get this draft constitution out in a timely fashion. So it meant long hours, sometimes going right into late into the night. So that was a big challenge. Financially, there was a small hiccup. I wouldn't call it a challenge, where the internal public consultation was delayed for a short period. But thereafter, we never had any issue in that particular regard. We also, could have dealt with some issues better on hindsight, but on the whole, I think we have comprehensively addressed all the issues that are relevant to constitutional development. The other challenge we had initially was we probably did not factor in the magnitude of this assignment, and thought we could do with just a skeletal staff of about 16 to 18. And we realized that was never going to work. And then we had to embark on a comprehensive process of mapping out key positions that will guide and assist the process of constitutional review and development. So in that particular regard, again, we bounced back and we made sure that everything was taken on board and the appropriate staff were recruited to speed up the process.
Thank you, Chairman. Another one from Amadou Jallo, a journalist with the Point newspaper. His question reads, you said in your statement that the only one regret you had is the non-use of the word secular in the Constitution. What concrete reason did you took to leave the word out?
When I made that statement, it needed to be taken into context, and I made that statement yesterday to the President, not here. And it was our regret that when the draft Constitution was published, that was the proposed draft Constitution was published in November, there was a lot of debate over the word secular, whether there should be secular or there should not be secular in the draft Constitution. And it ended up in very acrimonious exchanges, which we felt was regrettable. But that notwithstanding, as a country and as people, we need to move forward. And the reason why we've adopted the position that we have are quite clearly articulated in the report, and I've also addressed them in the statement. I'm not sure I need to repeat them. But the fact of the matter is we have put in provisions that we hope will allay fears, provisions that will ensure that every faith in this country is respected and treated fairly, and that those provisions are made and they are very clear in our view and are not subject to state interference.
Thank you. I think we will soon come to the end of the question and answer because of the time is not on our side. But we will at least have some 2 questions that the chairman will be able to answer. Another question from Momodo MS Bar, Foroya newspaper. Is the salary of the president and ministers stated in the constitution?
No, and we could not do that. That's not a constitutional matter.
Yeah. A follow-up question. Is the Auditor General's appointment subjected to National Assembly approval? What was your final decision on the Speaker? Is it elective within the elected members, or what is the process what processes are put in place?
The Office of Auditor General is one of the independent offices under the chapter on independent institutions, and all of those offices are subject to National Assembly confirmation. In terms of, what is the second question again?
No? The Speaker.
The Speaker. The provision remains the same, which is that the Speaker has to be somebody elected from outside of the National Assembly. But the Deputy Speaker or Deputy Speakers, as the case may be, has to come from within the National Assembly, meaning amongst the elected members.
I think that will be the final question.
If you have questions from private citizens, I'm happy to answer
Okay,
them.
you will answer some. Okay. This one is asking about the mandate of the National Center for Civic Education, NCCE, in the draft constitution.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, if you look at the current constitution, that's the 1997 constitution, and compare it to what we have actually expanded the role of the National Council for Civic Education. The current constitution limits the mandate of the NCCE to constitutional law matters, in other matters of the Constitution. But we've expanded that to go beyond that remit and to include statutes, other laws that the National Assembly passes in order to sensitize the public. And even where there are draft proposals for enactment, the National Council for Civic Education has a responsibility there. But also we have transformed the National Council for Civic Education into a commission and giving it that financial independence that it requires, because we think it's a very, very important institution in the overall governance architecture of this country, and they needed to be empowered, and we hope we have put in sufficient provisions to ensure that so that their expanded mandate can be effectively and efficiently carried out.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm trying to see if there is another question. Another question from Foroya newspaper, Yankuba Jallo. Local government authorities submitted that they want to control the extraction and harnessing of resources in their region. What is the draft saying about this? What is the draft saying about this?
Well, first of all, I think I will refer the questioner to the chapter on land matters, where we sought to address that issue. If you look at the principles that have been established under that particular chapter, one of them has to do with the equitable sharing of natural resources. I'm not sure about the controlling aspect of it, because that was not what we got from our public consultation. What people were asking for was to have a share of whatever was being extracted from their areas. and we put in a provision on equitable sharing and distribution of resources. But at the end of the day, we do need to recognize that whatever resource is found in this country becomes a national resource. It's just to ensure here that, that the communities that are affected have some equitable benefit arising out of that.
Another one here, what is the draft constitution saying about the dual citizenship?
Well, that's an open-ended question. I don't know exactly what it means, but
It's asking about the provision on dual citizenship.
yeah, there are different aspects of dual citizenship. That's why I say I don't understand which one. But let me just explain this briefly. Gambians, the citizens of the Gambia by birth. Now there is no difference between by birth or by descent. Once you are born of a Gambian parent, you are a citizen by birth. You can acquire citizenship of another country without losing your Gambian citizenship. If you are a foreign national living in the Gambia and has gone through a naturalization process, for instance, you do not lose the citizenship of your original country if there is a reciprocal arrangement, or if there is there is an arrangement whereby Gambians wishing to naturalize in that same country wouldn't have to lose their Gambian citizenship. So in that particular area, that's retained. However, where that reciprocity element is absent, they will have to give up their foreign nationality before they are given Gambian nationality. So those are the elements insofar as dual citizenship is concerned.
Thank you very much, Chair. I don't think there is any further questions from the viewers, and I thank you for responding to those questions at the best of your ability. Without much ado now, I will call on the Vice Chairperson, as usual, to give the vote of thanks. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen of the press, staff of CRC, good afternoon. It has been a long, tedious journey, and I believe it was a fulfilling one too, because we have delivered on our mandate. Throughout the journey, we had a wonderful partnership with the press and the general public. As we go our separate ways, we thank you for your valuable support and commend the draft constitution to you. We encourage citizens of this country to receive the draft as their own. Thank you very much, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Madam Vice. Very short statement. You are very good at making short statements. Congratulations for that. Without much ado, on behalf of the Commission, I thank my colleagues, the journalists. These are people who have been with us since we started this review process. We say thank you for being with us. Thank you for the partnership, and then keep posted. We'll keep you posted on our various social media platform. What next for the CRC? And big congratulations to our honorable commissioners for job well done. You know, I don't think what they have done we will be able to do. They will be here late at night, all trying to make sure that we have a very progressive constitution, and we have finally delivered on our mandate. So big congratulations to all of you. Thank you so much, and have a great day. With your permission, Chairman.
Of Constitution and the report, including an explanatory memorandum published to the public, and hopefully you will make sure that if it is not on the website, it gets onto it in the next few minutes.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a very important information. The CRC final constitution is out on our social media platforms. You can visit our website, www.crc220.org. Also on Facebook, Constitutional Review Commission is available. Thank you all. Yeah. .com. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.